In this video, I'm going to show you how to solve this multiple step equation. Whenever we're faced with a multiple step equation, we want to stop and first look and see what we are dealing with. So we have negative 144 equals 8 times, in parentheses, 2 plus 4m, close parentheses, plus 8m. So when we have a problem like this, we first want to notice that we have our variable in two places. We have a 4m and we have an 8m. So when we have variables in an equation, if we have it in multiple spots, we want to make sure that the variable is on the same side of the equation. All of the terms with the variable are on the same side of the equation so that we can combine those like terms when possible. So if we look here, we actually cannot yet combine the like terms because the 4m is within parentheses, and we're going to be multiplying that 4m times 8 within this equation. So we can't combine those two terms yet because the 8m is outside of parentheses, the 4m is inside of parentheses with this 8 multiplying it. We also don't want to move the 8m to the other side of the equation because that would be moving it away from the 4m, and we would have to then move either the 8m back or the 4m to the other side in order to combine the like terms. However, we can't do anything inside of this parentheses here yet because we have this times 8 on the outside. So that means that the first thing that we're going to have to do is deal with this term right here, this 8 times, in parentheses, 2 plus 4m. So that's the first thing we're going to have to deal with. And we have two options as to how we approach this. So one option would be to actually divide by 8. And if we divide by 8, we have to do that to each term on the right-hand side of the equation, and we also have to do that to the negative 144. So we're going to divide by 8 here, divide by 8 here, and divide by 8 here. On the next slide, I'll show you what we could have done instead. We could have distributed that 8 inside of the parentheses, but let's see if this works out okay. So we are left with, on the left-hand side, negative 144 divided by 8 is negative 18. Okay, if you didn't know that, you could do that division out. The 8 here and the 8 here, 8 divided by 8 is 1. And so those, as we might say, cancel because 1 times the 2 plus 4m is just 2 plus 4m. So we have 2 plus 4m, and technically we still have those parentheses there, but we're going to see how we don't need those anymore in a moment. So this 8 and this 8 go to 1. So 1 times m is just m, so we have plus m. Now the reason we really don't need these parentheses anymore is because we just have 3 terms being added. So based on that commutative property of addition, we'd be able to rearrange these, or with the associative property, we'd be able to associate them differently. So I'm going to go ahead and erase those parentheses because now I can combine my like terms. So I can combine this 4m and this plus m, and so the positive 4m plus the positive 1m is 5m. So we have 2 plus 5m equals negative 18. And now I have just a two-step equation. So I'm going to subtract this 2 from both sides of my equation. Had I tried to divide by 5 everywhere, I would have ended up with fractions or decimals. And so I'm going to do this subtraction first in hopes of avoiding some fractions and decimals. So negative 18 minus 2 is negative 20 equals 5m. So I'm going to divide both sides by 5, and I get negative 4 equals m. Okay, now when we're doing an equation like this, we want to make sure that we do our check, because it would have been very easy to make a mistake somewhere with all of these steps. So we have negative 144 equals 8 times 2 plus 4m plus 8m. So I simply am copying that original problem down. And now I'm going to replace the m with -4 because that's what I got for my solution. Plus 8 times -4. Okay, so I have -144 on the left-hand side equals, and then I still have this 8. And if I do 4 times -4, that's -16 plus 2, that'd be -14, so -14 there, plus 8 times -4 is -32. So you want to make sure that you're following the order of operations in here, but because this and this were two separate terms, I was able to kind of do them in the same step. And within the parentheses, I did this multiplication first and then did this addition. I was just able to do that, mentally in the same step. So now we have -144 equals 8 times -14 is -112 plus -32. And -144 equals, well, -112 plus -32 is in fact -144. So we got what we were hoping for there. So m equals -4 is our correct solution. So now on the next slide, I'm going to show you how we could have started the problem instead of dividing everything by 8. So we have the same problem here. And this time, instead of dividing everything by 8, which it worked out nicely to divide everything by 8 because each of my terms, so 8m was divisible by 8, this was divisible by 8, and -144 was divisible by 8. But if you don't have all of your terms being divisible by this number, it might be more advantageous to instead start by distributing the 8 and then going from there. So we're going to distribute this 8 to my two terms inside of my parentheses, and I'm going to end up with -144 equals 16 plus 32m plus 8m. Okay, and again, I can remove the parentheses because we now only have addition of terms. We have some multiplication with the 32m and the 8m, but the commutative property tells us that we can switch things around, and the associative property tells us that we could associate things differently. So what we're going to be able to do here is combine our two like terms now. And so we have 144 equals 16 plus 32m plus 8m is 40m. Okay, and we're going to then just solve this from here. Okay, so we are going to subtract 16 from both sides. It would not be advantageous to divide everything by 40 because then I would have 16 40ths as part of this, and then I have to subtract 16 40ths, and that would make it a messier problem. So -144 minus 16 is -160, sorry, which equals 40m. So now I'm going to divide both sides by 40. -160 divided by 4 is -4, which equals m. And I'm not going to show you the check for this one because it's going to be the same exact check as what we did before because we got the same answer, m equals -4. So that's just two ways to approach this type of problem where we can either divide by that 8 everywhere, or we can distribute the 8. When we divided by 8, we ended up with some of the smaller numbers, which might have been easier to work with, but the numbers here were not too bad to work with either, so either way, distributing or dividing by that 8 would have worked for this problem.